Welcome to the 10th and final round of the 31st edition of the Reykjavik Open. We started a little bit early today, so there's a prize giving straight afterwards. As we're coming into the last round, we had some incredible games yesterday, which have led to Grandmaster Adhijit Gupta from India going into the last round with a full point lead. And there are 5 players who are chasing 1 point behind. Grandmaster Ivan Chiparino from Bulgaria, Grandmaster Gwaine Jones from England, Shak Mamedarov, the top seed from Azerbaijan, Grandmaster Rambaldi from Italy, and of course Dmitry Andrikin, the second seed from Russia. And the story goes that if Rambaldi actually manages to defeat Gupta with the black pieces, the title will be decided on tiebreak, and the prize money will be divided according to the Hort system, which is basically that you take half of the prize money, it's divided equally, and the second half is divided to the placings you finish in your tiebreak procedure. How are you this morning?
I'm still confused about the tiebreak system. No. Other than that, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm. We also have, of course, in the final round, a lot of players are going for their norms, for their Grandmaster and International Master norms. We can report that because it is a 10-round tournament, there is a possibility of players actually achieving their norm before the last round, and this has in fact happened for 2 players. Yesterday, most people would have known that Tanya Sachdev was actually needing a draw against Grandmaster Sergei Movsesian, and she in fact did achieve this. So congratulations to Tanya for her second Grandmaster norm. She's already achieved it no matter what the result today. But we should also offer congratulations to Antal Tibor, who got his International Master norm already done after 9 rounds, yes. Clean cut.
I think his second straight year of achieving norm.
So very pleasing.
Yeah.
And as we're coming into the last round, 2 of our impressive international masters who've been playing quite well throughout the tournament, Nikolai Petrov from Russia and Justin Saka from the United States, both of them need a win today to get the GM norm, which is basically a performance rating of 2600 and above.
Yes. Justin Saka, who yesterday beat Icelandic top-rated player Hannes Stefansson, so potentially two norms will be achieved by beating up on the #1 Icelander.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
To go through the top pairing.
Yes, we have Gupta leading with a full point, and he's playing against Rambaldi. Most likely we will see a big fight there, because presumably Rambaldi wants to try to win the tournament. But it'll be a tough task with the black pieces against Gupta, who's been really solid in this tournament. Then we have Mamedarov against Sheparinov, the #1 against the #5 seed in the tournament. Dmitry Andrikin will play against Gwaine Jones. And all of these will be hoping that they can manage to win their game and that Gupta will fail on board 1. Then we have a number of clashes between the people with 6.5 points. They will be trying, of course, to get as high up in the rankings as they can. So Rapport will try to win against Bromberger, Malkumian against Di Berardino, Movsesian against a Wonder Liang. So seems like the high-rated players have a lot of whites. So I'm expecting a lot of decisive games.
Mm-hmm. It is often said that last rounds have rules of their own, as players are vying for norms, for money, for placings. How do you feel, about last rounds where there's usually quite a lot of money and prestige involved in the Reykjavik Open or in other international tournaments?
Yes, I mean it depends. Some people just try to get as much money as they can. Mm-hmm. Some people will gamble, try to win, and go out the standings. But others will try to sort of secure what they can get with draws.
I mean, it's always interesting that you always believe that chess players are very cool, calm, collected, and you've seen many of the strongest tournaments in previous years where the last rounds have not gone according to schedule. Probably the most famous was the candidates in London, where the 2 co-leaders, Vladimir Kravnik and Magnus Carlsen, both leading the candidates, in fact, both lost in the last round, which you could have got very good money on, and every bookmaker type thing. So even though you sort of look at the pairings and you look at the games, it's tough for some people. A lot of Grandmasters prefer to do their hard work in the penultimate round and then play very solidly in the last round, assuming they've done well in the penultimate, and therefore they keep the draw in hand if you can actually achieve such a thing. So I think we'll go straight to board one, if possible, to see whether Rambaldi is trying to cause a little bit of trouble.
So Rambaldi has a tough task with the black pieces, of course. Gupta opens with d4, as he's mostly been doing. And decides to go for a solid opening with d5. And Gupta goes for the Catalan with g3, which we've seen already a number of times in the tournament.
And it's very interesting because the Catalan, of course, can be played sacrificially with pawn sacrifices, but very often we've seen in this tournament players use it to gain a small edge as well and try to play without risk.
So this is all well known. And Rambaldi decides to take on c4, initiating the open Catalan. And we have the main line here, a6. We've seen games with Sheparinov earlier in the tournament where he played a4 here. But Gupta goes for queen takes c4, b5, queen c2, bishop b7, bishop to d2, which is probably the most modern mainland in the Catalan. Bishop e4, queen c1.
All been seen before, of course.
Yeah. Black can go back here and you will find some draws like this in the database. But he goes for c6, which is a rather recent development. Which I think it might be Kramnik, I'm not entirely sure. But I know that the Italian team must have studied this line because in the European Championship, our team Iceland played against Italy and their board won. Played this same line against Hannes Stefansson. You
have, of course, an excellent memory, as this game has been reached in a game between Anish Giri and Vladimir Kramnik. So it's good to see that the brain cells are still working at such an hour in the morning.
Yeah.
This was, in fact, from the London Classic in 2014.
Yeah, and I know that there was a repertoire series by Jan Gustafsson where he had this line recommended. But interestingly, this is only the third GM that Rambaldi has played.
Yes, it's one of the sort of interesting, it's one of the typical happenings that happens at large opens where you have you're a Grandmaster, you've got a 2550, 2600 rating. If you're not performing at your absolute best, it's very often you are playing down to the international masters, and therefore really to continually to play Grandmasters, you really have to be on the top few boards.
Yeah.
And you can see that, for example, the number 1 and 2 seeds will not play this tournament, which often happens. And we can see that it's Rambaldi's third GM. He, of course, was the recipient of a small gift yesterday from Armenian Grandmaster Gerber Sargsyan, who made a large blunder, which has propelled Rambaldi up onto the very top board. As we've mentioned, Gupta plays his 6th GM. He's always been around the top boards, and he's been almost certainly the most consistent of all the players. And Gwaine Jones, who was complaining about not playing any Super Grandmasters last year, he's playing his 5th this year. Yes. So in some ways that actually would be, even though you don't really want to play a 2700 plus Grandmaster with black in the last round of a tournament in order to actually win some money, he still expressed his desire to play these guys as often as he could to gain the much needed experience. I'm not sure which we prefer. You know, it's always nice to play the guy in the middle of the tournament. Suddenly when you're black and you want to win to get the prize money, you kind of don't want to play these guys, you see.
Yes.
And Dmitry Andrikin, of course, he took 2 early half-point buys, so he's sort of been playing catch-up throughout the whole tournament. And this is, in fact, his 2nd GM of the tournament. Yeah.
Conversely, Tanya Saktyev, I think, has played 6 GMs in a row now.
Again, as the international master, has been playing very well, very solidly. Yeah. She's always been playing up, and as we know, having to be play above 2600 to gain her Herr GM Norm?
Yeah, I think in general, I think there must be a better system for pairings that needs to be invented, so that you play more against players around your strength.
Yes, yes. I mean, there was, I did remember in one large open in Gibraltar, Alexis Schur was complaining to me that in a large group, he was always the top seed. And if you can imagine, it's top half versus bottom half, so there's 20 people. Number 1 will play number 11. And he says, Emil Sotowski's lost a few rating points. And therefore, he's now the 8th seed or something in this small group. So he's playing number 18, or number 19, I should say. He said he's getting an easier pairing every round than I am.
Yes, yes.
And he said, look, this top half versus bottom half, I'm actually always playing stronger players, you see. And the same. So it's interesting that many people have tried to work out a better system for open tournaments. But when you have an open tournament with a huge number of people, all the way from the top 20, people in the top 20 in the world, such as Shakman Bedarov, to talented amateurs who are playing in the local town, it's always hard to find a balance.
Yes. Hopefully somebody can figure out a better solution, so that we can have less complaining in more chess.
So I'm going to say that in this position, Bishop G5 has in fact never been played.
Okay.
And
I think knight c3 is probably the logical move.
Kramnik in fact played a4.
Okay.
And the most common move is actually bishop to e3.
Yeah, because there's an immediate problem on d4, of course.
There's an immediate problem on d4. And therefore a4, as Kramnik played, takes care of that, because there would be trouble on the long diagonal if after a4 you played bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, and you try to take the pawn on d4.
So Gupta played this quite quickly, so I'm pretty sure he has.
No, this is the thing
idea in
that
mind.
Rambaldi, of course, is in the same situation as you have mentioned. He knows that he can win a pawn, but he's walking into his opponent's preparation into the last round.
Interestingly, after not so long, I think, he accepts the challenge and takes on d4.
Very interesting. So in this position, again, there's many choices. You could play the immediate a4, you can play rook d1, you could play knight c3. It's not entirely obvious what the best move is for white here. But let's say we just played a4. Let's just try one. With the immediate threat of taking on b5.
Utilizing 2 pins here.
Yes, yes. So that must be, to me, something a little bit concrete. We can always hit the queen with rook d1 later. Knight c3 doesn't actually... Well, actually, knight c3 also hits the b5 pawn. And maybe black plays b4 and hits it back. And after a4, I think this is a very concrete threat. If black played... well, I must admit, b4 looks like the easy way to get out of this problem. But you could play knight bd7 and try to give up the pawn under favorable circumstances. I don't know. Suppose you hang on to it with b4. Let's be greedy. Can you take advantage of this? Do you give me a hit on the queen now? Because the pawn, you're not going to...
looks reasonable.
Yeah, queen retreats to b6, a7. And then you play knight bd2 and you hit it to c4. You can see very obvious compensation, but it's still a pawn. It's interesting that Rambaldi played this reasonably quickly, because when you're playing a grandmaster who is deliberately giving up a pawn, and with the reputation of Gupta.
I mean, white will always have compensation here. He's already played a4, and I suspect that...
a4 looks like a very logical move.
Yeah.
I believe that the Italian Grandmaster Rambaldi will take his time over the reply. We should visit some of the other top boards, and maybe some of the gentlemen who need a Grandmaster norm, Mr. Sarkar and Mr. Petrov.
Yes, we'll check through some of the top boards, and then we'll check on Justin Sarkar, who has been playing well, chasing a GM norm.
If we go to...
Looks like a Catalan, but with some slight differences.
Board...
Shakman Diarra, board 2.
Board 2. And yes, again, Mamedarov. In fact, I was very impressed this morning in my haste to actually try to write the report. I went down to the breakfast room remote hotel at exactly 7 a.m. To grab a little bit of food before heading for my coffee shop. There was a rather large group of French tourists. You could barely move. And at 7 a.m., there was only one chess player having not only a large bowl of cereal, but with a full English breakfast alongside. And at 7 a.m., Shak Mamedarov was there bright and early, looking very serious and prepared. And this was, to me, a very positive sign, because if a GM gets up before 9 o'clock in the morning, something is happening. Either he has a flight to catch, or he has a big last round game, I think are the only two reasons I can imagine. The fact that Mamedarov was actually there at 7 a.m.
There's a third option, but
yes,
I find it highly unlikely.
So Mamedarov was at 7 a.m. eating a very hearty breakfast, already showered and primed.
Yeah.
So I think he's ready for business to try to win with white.
Here we have, okay, if Shak plays c4, we just have a normal Catalan.
Yep.
Exactly like what happened on board 1. But he played a3 here.
Again, trying to get out of the well-known theoretician preparation of his Bulgarian counterpart, Mr. Chaparinov.
Yeah, so clearly he didn't want to, blitz out 20 moves of theory and have the Bulgarian ready for everything. So
he also knows that Chaparinov is a little bit adverse to time travel, and it's always nice to get them thinking as early as possible, even though a3 is not really such a scary move as it were.
No,
it's more temporizing.
It's not a scary move.
And the thing is that you almost certainly know that c4 will actually come anyway. So we're going to continue. Knight b7.
No, I played c4 anyway, which seems like a3 doesn't seem very useful. After knight b2. Yeah, fortunately for him, black can't really try and hold on to the pawn here, but or can he?
Well, I mean, many times you can try for this b5 move in order to meet knight e5 with knight d5, as it were. So, but it is a little bit risky. But then you think, well, he's giving me an a3 move. Can I really not play b5 here? And the typical, if we move the knight e5, knight d5 is... Then knight c6 is a little bit, if I want my two bishops. Yeah. But okay, if black wants to try something, maybe white doesn't even have to play knight e5, you can play a4 as well, but you only want to play b5 when you've had something.
Well, white will always have compensations, play e4, maybe take the bishop pair.
Yes. One of the big ideas of maybe this a3 move is that when white plays e4 with this famous sacrifice pawn sitting on the c4 square, that usually black can play knight b4, knight d3.
Yes.
It may not make an actual difference in this game, of course, but the knight will have to retreat instead of going to that d3 that's often been weakened, because we have a fianchetto bishop in the Catalan. And with the pawn a3, at least it doesn't hurt us. But what's a little bit unusual is that in virtually every line where black plays d takes c4 and tries to hang on to it with b5, black will play a4 at some stage in order to tickle the pawn on b5, and therefore the move a3 would seem to be a slight waste of time. So it's very unusual. So it must be tempting for Mamedarov to play b5, I think. It's the critical line.
Yes.
And the other unusual move, only because we've seen about 15 Grunfelds, is to play c3, just to annoy him to not allow the pawn to take, and then play c5 next move, to play it a bit more in this style.
Yes.
But okay, we will leave Mr. Chipurinov there. I think we're going to now visit the Gymnorm game of Ariantari versus Justin Saka on one of the lower boards. So for our American viewers, this is a big game.
Yes.
Oh, we have looks like a very topical Sicilian. Naidov. And as we flick through the moves, we have the Sicilian Naidov, the most aggressive move for white, bishop g5, that was once the main line, where there were whole books devoted to this. Knight bd7, sort of one of the modern variations. More normal is pawn to e6. Queen e2, again a slightly unusual move. I believe that in the very recent excellent books by Grandmaster Negi from India, he has, hasn't put it, favored the queen to e2 in these positions with bishop g5, as opposed to the more heavily analyzed f4, queen f3 lines. Both players seem to, of course, know the theory because they've played the next few moves quickly. And I believe this is a direct transposition to the analysis in Negi's book, but this has always been played in many, many games. The Sicilian players will recognize the same sort of similar structural ways. The pawn's on e6, d6, the bishop will go to e7, the light squared bishop will go to b7. White, by playing to pawn to g4, has initiated the typical pawn storm type of variation, where he wishes to play bishop takes knight on f6 and g5 and f5. And interestingly, normally this would be a completely famous book line that's been played for, I don't know, 60, 70 years with the queen on f3. But the queen on a2 has a slightly different slant. And they continued on, h6, bishop h4, rook b8, to the typical sequence to play b4. One problem is that you've committed yourself to playing rook b8. There will be no more castling queenside, which is still often.
White allows b4, doesn't really have a choice. A takes and rook takes.
Now, a very unusual looking move, bishop e1, although I believe this is still being played in at least 5 games. And queen to b6 happened.
Yes.
Which is still, I believe, the, hasn't put it, the more concrete move. You're threatening rook takes d4.
Yes, I believe white was threatening knight d5.
Knight d5, yes.
Knight takes d5, pawn takes d5, the rook's hanging and then e6 is hanging. So queen b6 at least covers the rook in that line.
Yes, and threatening to take on d4.
b2. Now
And b2.
Bishop f2. And we're still following 5 games that have been played in this line.
Even though Justin Saka is black in this line, he would be quite happy that he got himself a very sharp position. His great fear would have been that maybe he would have got stuck in a very dry line where he would not have been able to, in fact, generate the much needed counterplay.
So rook takes b2, we have knight b3.
Yes,
attacking the queen and the rook will be...
And the rook will be lost.
Lost.
So rook takes b2 is not in fact a threat. We can show one of the games at a high level. No, that would be quite a few moves ago. But
yeah,
one
in this
possible
position,
yes, yes.
where Yi and Vasiljev Graf, we had castles here. But that's
another story completely.
Another story completely.
In this position here, there is again another discovered attack being threatened. So black has to do something about this after queen b6. I don't think you want to move the queen on b6. You'd like to still be threatening b2. What happens if you play the natural-looking knight c5? Trying to still take on b2 and blocking something.
Yeah, white must do something about b3.
b2, and
b2, yeah.
I guess knight c5. The problem is that it takes the knight away from the e5 square, and therefore maybe white can play the direct e5, which is one of the points of playing f4 and queen e2.
We have maybe some knight c6 ideas.
And knight c6 might be a little bit painful, and this could be a problem, I guess. Normally, if white gets to play e5 with the king in the center, and as you Ingvar has pointed out, the weakness of the c6 square, then very often he's getting at black's king first. Maybe knight c5 is not the best move. Maybe I have to be a little bit more circumspect and play the queen c7 move, hold e5, get the queen off that discovered attack.
Yeah, and maybe if Ariantari knew the situation, then maybe he could tease him a little bit and indirectly offer a draw with bishop e1.
Well, don't forget that Arantari is still the high-rated player here with
Yeah,
white.
of course.
He's the young man who's best, but it's nice to
if you want to play a different strategy.
Yes, well, not so much that, but again, it's teasing your opponent a little bit because Saka would obviously know that he needs to win. And Queen C7 is a very normal move, stopping E5, and then it's interesting to see what white plays. Without Rook takes B2 being threatened, I would want to continue on my famous H4, G5 plan, since I've committed myself to G4. So something like H4 with the threat of G5, and then very normal here for black in a very typical sequence of moves is instead of allowing the direct G5, as you correctly pointed out, you play H5 yourself, you play G5 grabbing space, and then the knight goes forward to G4. And then you look at the weakness of the E6 square, and maybe I can throw in G6. Because obviously taking on G6 would allow knight takes E6, which hits the queen, and G7. And the thing is that there are many books which show the many different types of sacrifices, where you sacrifice a knight on D5, or you sacrifice knight takes E6. So a very, very sharp position, a very important game for the American international master Justin Saka, who is trying to remember his analysis or his database, or maybe he's trying to work it over the board. But to be honest, when you play silly knight off, you have to know this sort of stuff very well.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is if a grandmaster like Nagy writes a very, very complicated book showing all these lines, then it's part of your duty as the black player to know what his analysis is, because anybody can just pick up a book and start bashing out the analysis in it. So I think we'll leave him there, and we're going to visit the game of Elizabeth Patz.
Yeah, who unfortunately does not have normal chances after her loss yesterday. But she's playing against Alexander Wolemir, who we saw play these two.
Oh, they're our friendly dragon player, but Liz is mainly a D4 player, so in reality this would not
no dragon. But of course he goes for the Dutch.
Yes.
Then we get Dutch. Knight f6, bishop g5.
So this is quite interesting because this is quite a popular line against the Dutch, but with knight on c3, and the knight still on g1.
Yeah.
And very often you try to play an early bishop takes f6. And if black cannot play, if you imagine the knight was on c3, not allowing e4, then black cannot play g6, which would be the natural move, and he has to waste a move with knight bd7. So, but playing the knight to f3 allows knight e4, which, to be honest, in general, is what black wants to play here, because he does not want to have the doubled f pawns. And now, very interestingly, Liz has played h4.
Yeah, sort of borrowing an idea from Petrampovsky somewhat.
And I've got to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen this position before.
No.
This may be an original position, because usually the knight goes to c3 early, stopping knight e4.
Maybe you've seen similar ideas, but yeah,
similar ideas, but
not exactly in this position. c5. Typically, okay, he might think about at some point taking the bishop, and then we like the pressure on the b2 pawn at some point.
Yes, and queen a5 check is always a nuisance with the knight on e4.
Knight c3, black played h6, and the bishop went back to a d2. Usually
black is very happy to,
Usually we don't like playing h6 with the inclusion of f5 because of the weakness of this diagonal, this square.
Yes, in general, you already feel a little looseness with the black pawns. It's not the most solid of structures, as Ingvar has pointed out. I have to assume that with the pawn on e7, the black dream is still to play g6 in fianchetto, and therefore sit there in his little unusual structure, but at least g6 would cover the h5 square and be able to meet h5 with g5. But whenever you make so many pawn moves and create so many weaknesses so early in the game, as Ingvar has pointed out, you can be you can have an accident, if you want to call it that.
I think the natural move must be to take
take on d2 would be,
and then maybe take on d2, or maybe after you take on d4. But You don't want white taking here on e4, although at the moment this knight doesn't have any retreat square, so maybe
well, one nice
it's an
thing
option
is
to keep it.
if I play knight takes c2 or knight takes c3, I can take on d4 and you cannot recapture with a pawn. So in theory, I will maybe be able to have a large pawn center.
Yeah, maybe at some point something like this, but okay.
No, you are still. It's very. You have to be very careful.
Yeah.
But the main point is that white will not be able to recapture with a pawn in the center, which is usually the desirable idea. And usually, if black plays c5, I will play d5. But in this position, it did not happen. So a very interesting original position.
Okay.
We have the unfortunate news that there's at least one player who forgot that it was a 11 a.m. start. Now we don't know whether after his result yesterday he decided that it was better to go sightseeing on his last round, or unfortunately, as many chess players have done in the past, but it should not be really applicable in today's internet age when their schedule is correctly pointed out on their website and many other places. But Grandmaster Daniel Dvirdny did not make it to his board in time and lost by default.
Yeah, so he might have overslept or forgotten something, but in general people know that last rounds in general are morning rounds, so that people can leave the same day usually. But yeah, unfortunate. We're going to have a look at Michal Marin's game.
Who's a very original player on the board.
For 24, I believe, against Halldór Grétar Einarsson. Icelandic local FIDE master who has been doing well recently and climbing up the rating ladder again. Knight c3, d5. We have the Grunfeld.
Grunfeld, yes.
He's played for many years.
And in fact, it looks very much like a mainline Grunfeld, which is almost unusual in today's play, since black is doing reasonably well, as long as he knows the theory. Very sharp positions.
So bishop e3, knight c6.
Okay, so now we have one of these positions where white can play d5, allow bishop takes c3, but very often you can give up this piece and play bishop to d2, and if bishop takes, queen takes, and you have this typical idea. So, but Marin played normally, which is still quite well-known theory.
c1, and
very often here we have the endgame with c takes d4 and queen a5 check.
Yeah.
And then you can play the slight edge with queen d2, king takes d2.
Yeah, you must take the king to keep protection here. And
the whole idea is that if white gets to keep his center, he will be a little bit better. And there's been games of Kramnik with white where after the player plays Carlsen's in rook d8, he just calmly plays the king back to e1 and tries to keep his space advantage. But this did not happen in our game. And we had the immediate castles, which allows d5, which is again the desirable move for white, because it's still been played before. This has all still happened. So knight e5.
Knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, f4, bishop g7, and e5, which might be...
It's a very aggressive move, trying to grab as much of the center as possible.
And now it says bishop takes e5.
I must admit, I almost don't believe that, since that looks like a free piece. So I'm going to make the small wager that this is simply a transmission error.
Transmission error, it must be.
Because...
it just makes no sense. I mean, there's no check on h4.
Yes. Maybe pawn to e5, perhaps? So e5, trying to think of...
This looks weird.
I mean, we do not believe that any reasonable player would play bishop takes e5 here.
No.
So it'd be quite... you could almost work out what the correct move would have been. Maybe white did not play e5 either. And therefore, somehow, black played pawn to e5, perhaps. I think we will have to wait till our technical team check with this. Since this
maybe
looks like
let's finish the roundup of the top boards and see what's happening.
So
go to
board 3, Dimitri Andrekin versus English Grandmaster Gwen Jones.
Uh-huh. Okay, and Jones is playing
his beloved King's Indian, yes.
What seems to have transposed into somehow a dragon.
We can see the Gwen here is come prepared with the suit for the last round on the stage with the banana and the water and the coffee. He's as good as can be. He believes that being well dressed in the last round and try to give himself the slightly more serious look, as it were, helps him to motivate.
So yeah, this is kind of looking like
yes, now accelerated dragon type position with the slightly unusual H3 move.
Yeah, so the Maroczy bind, and yeah.
We've had this position before,
earlier in the tournament. Black traditionally plays knight d7, tries to exchange these bishops, and in this game, white allowed it.
Traditionally, this helps black to get the draw.
In other games, we've seen white try to keep the bishop with bishop e3, but here he takes on g7 and plays bishop to g4.
This is the one advantage of playing h3 and not f3, which would be very normal here.
Ah, yeah.
But I'm not sure of the idea. Obviously, with the bishop on e2 and then playing f3, the bishop on e2 does not have that many options. So maybe one plan is to simply take the knight, if allowed, because it doesn't really have any other ideas. It does stop the knight moving to c5,
yes,
I guess.
Because now we have e5, which is slightly annoying and different from the usual positions with f3. You're right about that. So yeah, and knight e5. Can we maybe be very aggressive with f4? Quite possibly, because takes, I mean.
Yes.
I don't know, maybe.
No, I mean, I think this looks very original position, very unusual h3 bishop g4, which is, you would never consider this.
So this might be a prepared idea, as we see Andrekin with extra time on his clock.
And he's wandering around, as it were.
Yes, 35 minutes down on the clock. We're going to go for Mark Esserman on board 22, who is playing an aggressive game, it seems. H4, really going for the kill, it seems. So they played the Scandinavian, knight c3, queen d6. The
modern way to try to put the queen on a slightly unusual looking square, but has been played many times now in modern chess.
Esserman chooses a very solid way to play here. Knight g2, preparing to bring the bishop to f4. Try to get all the pieces out to active squares, and preferably with tempo. So knight g2, e2, g6. Bishop comes out, and the queen must go back. And this...
We can see now the queen and bishop lining up in the typical anti-dragon King's Indian type setup.
And white seems to be ready for an attack here, h4, and already he's thinking about h5.
Yes, with the immediate...
typical idea here that we can take the knight, and there's no defense here on g7.
We can also report that in fact our technical team has checked and bishop takes c5 was not played against Mikael Marin.
Yeah, it made no sense. It had to be.
It had to be the board error.
Some kind of error.
We thought maybe one of your Icelandic countrymen had maybe had a late night for a little while, but it's not true.
Free pawn on e4. No.
So a big decision here, because h5. If you get h5 in for free, because usually the knight on f6 covers the h5 square, it's slightly annoying. You don't really want to give somebody h5, castle queenside, h takes g6, bishop takes g7, and basically mate, because the knight can go to e4 to dislodge the knight on f6. So black is trying to think, okay, how do I avoid this? And it's
she played b5.
She played the countess, yes. But okay, that's postponing the decision a little bit.
The problem and the decision. I guess bishop e3 should be quite normal.
Okay, at least now, to be fair, if I play a move like a5 or b4, I can dislodge the knight from going to e4 early, which would be the typical getting rid of the defender bit. The knight does not have such an obvious square. It has to go...
I kind of want a castle, so
yes.
I guess I would...
But at least that knight is on a4, and it's not heading for my king side, as it were. And then again, the other obvious move would be, pardon me, to play a5 instead of b4 to try to... White, theoretically, should have to waste one more tempo to save his bishop.
So this might explain bishop d3, which he played. In which case we can at least play knight e4 if black were to play b4. So Asam went with the bishop to d3. In general, we would like it on this diagonal with the attack, because the pin on f7 can be quite useful.
When we'll,
but maybe it wasn't possible.
Yes, well, I mean, a5, you know, winning another tempo for free, and you want to, since White has announced his aggressive intention with h4, it seemed very logical that White wants the castle queenside. And if you can play moves like b5 and a5 with gain of tempo, it's always a nice feeling. It's still a very dangerous looking position, because, as we said a few days ago, one of the basic ideas of this position for White is to simply exchange the corresponding pieces. In other words, the bishop on h6 for the bishop on h7, the pawn on h4 for the pawn on h7, and if we can swap off the knight on c3 for the knight on f6, then White would just play queen h6 and announce mate. So, no, but it's very dangerous, because in this exact position, I am basically threatening, I assume, h5, and bishop takes g7, and you have to be very careful here.
Yeah, black must probably do something about this h5 idea. And I was thinking about e5, but I'm not sure.
No, a very principled idea.
Just trying
Ingvar.
to exchange queens. And
exchange queens and then play knight g4.
Yeah.
And then after d takes e5, queen takes queen, I would have to recapture with the bishop. And then I would play knight g4.
Yeah, but maybe I can just hold on to the pawn with f4, and yeah, shouldn't be enough.
Of course, White can also play bishop takes g7 here as well.
Yeah.
So maybe it's tough to play e5, but e5 is the move you want to play, and you really don't want to play knight h5 to stop h5.
Because black
bishop
needs some development. Or
but the White plan is also, you know, the brute attacking plan. It's not so obvious.
Unfortunately, we don't have any moves here.
No, then f3, and
f3 is available, so
it's actually not so easy to defend.
It's a bit scary to get such a... Your opponent is announcing his intentions. And,
okay, so in the typical Sicilian dragon, we would have the pawn on f3, holding that g4 square, and we want to try to take advantage of this. So I think that we should combine your idea and play a move that looks a little bit anti-positional, but we get a tempo. So try bishop takes h6, which looks terrifying when you first see it, but it's only there for one move, because we get to play knight g4. The queen must retreat, and then I'll play e5 straight away.
Okay, that might be
queen f4 maybe.
Good idea. Yeah, if we go back, then maybe e5.
At least I'm playing e5 as fast as I can. The queen is only on h6 for one move, yeah? So it's not so easy. I would still be tempted to play e5 and then just attack the e5 square one more time. I'm trying to basically counter-attack in the center as quickly as possible. The immediate e5 wasn't possible, but at least here I can put knight to g4 with temping. I think I play
queen e2 looks normal as well. E5.
But I'd still play e5, I think. And then any exchange here, I'm very happy, as it were, if I can try to do something. I'm not sure. It's terrifying when you play these lines, because you know that it's the last round.
A bit weakened still, although...
And to be honest, the only reason I thought of this is that I'm a bit terrified of what's about to happen to me, because h5 looks really quite strong and a very direct threat. So my second best move is terribly looking knight h5, which is the very ugly move.
Yeah.
But I don't want to play knight h5 unless somebody's threatening my family, basically. So I want to try to do something.
Play knight h5.
So I don't know. I don't know what else to play, to be honest.
No.
Because in the dragon,
Tricky game.
Very interesting. We'll have to go back there. Shall we have a look at another slightly unusual opening in the game of Grandmaster Sabino Brunello, who unfortunately yesterday lost a dramatic game to Dimitri Andrikin.
Yes. Brunello is then black, yeah.
This I believe is the young Norwegian lad?
Yes, Johan Sebastian Christensen.
Johan Sebastian Christensen has been a very social young man. I've seen him around talking to the local Icelandic players and helping them out with their chess. He's a very sociable young man.
Yeah, he's been here many times. Yeah, like most of the Norwegian kids who are going to this NTC school. E4, sort of transposing to, I guess, E4 B6, knight F3, but yeah, Brunello already playing in an unconventional way, especially after knight F6, when we get some funky hybrid of the Alekhines and the Owens defense.
Yes, because normally White's played D4, so he can play a more obvious bishop D3, holding the E4 pawn. But here he cannot play bishop D3, but he got E5 with tempo, so he's not going to complain too much.
Knight takes D5, bishop takes D5.
Very principled from White.
Yeah, now he grabs more space in the center, and at some point he can think about attacking this bishop, perhaps, but after C5, he took on C5.
Okay, if I played the obvious C4 move, trying to grab as much as I could, and assuming that bishop takes F3, queen takes F3, I'm not worried about the D4 pawn because there's a minor rook on A8.
Yeah, maybe black can play knight C6. Here,
yes. Oh, actually, yes.
And
he's happy because.
Yeah, he's actually happy. Yeah.
I cannot stop knight takes D4.
Counter-attacking in the center.
Excellent. Yes.
So yeah, anti-positionally giving up the bishop, but with some concrete ideas behind it. But C5.
No, it's attacking the center. A very good idea.
But he's sacrificing a pawn here because now we're attacking the bishop. He protects it, and c takes b6. So very unusual opening by Brunello. Judging by the clock times, it's probably improvisation.
Yes, he's in fact not. He's used at 15 minutes, and he feels sometimes in the last round when you don't have a chance to get one of the larger prizes, it allows you to play a little bit more creatively.
Yeah, so maybe it's going back to the roots in this round and just having some fun, it seems. Bishop e2, knight c6, castles, rook c8.
Interesting, I know Brunello's a very solid player.
Yes, in general.
So, if somebody told me that he'd played this as black, I probably wouldn't believe them. But in fact, I think he's just saying, well, I lost yesterday. I've got this young, theoretical player from Norway. How does he feel about playing something a little bit strange at 11 o'clock in the morning? And the funny thing is that when you play it and you win, you feel fantastic. But then when you play something really unusual in the last round against somebody and you get beaten up, you regret it for the next 2 weeks.
You might regret it. But for now, I mean, black is threatening to take on f3 and take on e5. Rook on a8 would have been hanging in that line, but now it's on c8. So I must admit, black seems to have very obvious play. One of the nice things about all these openings where you give up the pawns early is that you hope that you get some action down your open files. So by virtue of actually sacrificing a pawn, I have an open B and C file, and right here we can see that the queen on B6 is hitting B2, and normally we would like to play bishop E3, but B2 would be on, and the rook is on the C file hitting the C2 pawn. So the obvious moves to develop are not really available, and I have to do something about this. And the rook E1, which indirectly defends the E5 pawn, seems to have its problems after bishop C5 with a simple attack on the F2 pawn, and we must do something else. So
I must admit, I'm not so sure how defends everything.
No.
Because the normally you would say the e5 pawn to be the valuable one, but it's not so easy to defend this pawn. So with the black has the very obvious threat of just playing bishop takes c3 and knight e5 if he wishes. He may not, but winning a central pawn back for nothing is always a good deal. I don't know.
Yeah, so this might be turning out okay for.
I would say that if he wins back the pawn, he has easily reached equality and can look forward to the future.
Another, well, generally inventive player is on board 4, Richard Rapport against Stefan Bromberger. Bromberger has been staying.
He's been the very solid German Grandmaster this tournament. He
jumped up to the top boards and has been staying solid. And once again, Rapport is playing a knight to f3.
We can see the players now on our screen. They're quite young looking, except Bromberg, I think, is not so young. Just takes good care of himself.
Yeah, he looks younger than he is. He's
in his early 30s, I believe.
Yeah, born in 1982, I believe. So probably 33 years old.
33, 34. We have Alex Shabalov there, looking on. So, as we saw in many rounds of Richard Rapport, he has often started with a kingside fianchetto, and then after he castles, he then decides where to put his pawns.
Yes. Black plays here a very solid line against the system. After c4, e6, setting up the triangle. The bishop is outside the pawn chain. Very, very solid, and has been played very often. And Rapport decides to put the pawn on d4 now.
Usually when the bishop's already on g4 or f5, this is a very solid system for black. I have already remarked that I call this almost the one bishop defense.
Yeah.
Bring out a bishop, take something, and then put every single pawn on a light square, or the same color as your bishop, and hang on for grim death.
Like Elizabeth Patz did in one of the rounds.
So, we'll just play through. So queen b6, happy to queen swap and keep the structure.
Let's see, 3, bishop e7. And actually it seems like we have more or less a normal looking Slav type of position. White breaks with e4.
Oh, okay. Interesting that Bromberger took, but he's got the d5 square, which is not usual, because
he uses right away here. And white wants to keep the bishop, so bishop d2. And this is where we're at.
Very solid looking position.
Solid for black. Kind of a typical middle game.
Black will play rook d8 and move his queen. And he might have to solve the problem of the bishop on g4, because maybe knight to e5 would be bothersome. So in fact, I think we believe
he took an f3.
He took an f3. He decided not to wait, which is a very typical idea. Pawns and white squares, and don't allow your bishop to be gone. So and now
black is quite solid.
Very solid. Very
play
solid.
rook d8, I think, because you want to take with the rook on d5, and then maybe he can put pressure on d4 and.
No, we believe that this is again.
Okay, White has the bishop pair, and he also has his own ideas. Maybe he can set up the old pattern on the diagonal, and maybe it's.
He has a bit more space, tricky, but it still should be solid. I believe that we have some news coming that in the Tari Saka game, which was the very sharp Sicilian, we have a very interesting position. So we're going to quickly go there, especially for our Norwegian and American viewers.
Oh, we had. Okay, we had this. Bishop b1, queen b6, bishop f2, queen c7.
Yes, it's all followed there.
And then h4 as we expected, g5, knight g4.
Bishop e1.
Bishop e1, so now we have more or less the same position as before, but with some slight differences on the king side.
So very interesting that Saka has decided if you don't succeed the first time, just keep hitting that b2 pawn.
So there is some difference between this position and this position.
Okay, so would you like to explain what they are?
I'm trying to figure them out. So,
so in this position, let's just see, because in this position we saw the knight on d4 is on pre. So we have to actually do something about this. If because our last move was bishop e1, if we're going to try to take advantage of this, if we try the thematic Sicilian sacrifice.
If we go like straight down.
Look, I
Avenue, can we try?
No, I didn't mean that one. I meant the knight d5 sacrifice. because there's no time to take on d4. He must take on d5. Then I take on b4. Queen takes. And now I see the queen on b4, the bishop on e7. I have knight c6. I have knight f5. So knight c6, knight f5, e takes d. I have various choices here. So maybe after e takes d5, I am threatening our beloved favorite tactic of queen takes e7.
Yes, and knight c6 check,
or
just
check.
knight c6 check. Well, then f4 hangs actually.
So queen takes e7 here is a big threat because it's not so easy to defend this bishop. So black has to defend.
What have you sacrificed? 2 pieces for the rook. Okay, so we're not even done material. So yeah, we're trying to take on e7. Rook e1 might be an idea.
But again,
it's already very difficult to defend here.
But this is a very typical sacrifice. Sicilian knight d5 is always a threat, and with the queen on b6, it was quite a forcing line.
Yeah. So we're looking at this. The current position, knight d5.
Okay, but it's thematic, but it's quite actually maybe it's not so hard to calculate. But the big difference here is that black has to take it because we have
yeah, of course,
queen on
we
b6.
have a double attack here. So we'll just capture the rook if he doesn't take. So he must take.
We take on b4, very forcing. We assume that he has to capture. We take on d5.
So actually, we're only giving up a pawn so far, or 1 point. In
we
material.
believe that it.
Oh, he played knight d5.
Very, very, very impressed by young Ariantari from Norway. 15 years old.
So e takes d5, e takes d5.
I hate to say this for American viewers, but I believe that the norm for Justin Saka may be disappearing into the northern sea, going across.
Yeah. Bishop takes b4, of course, first, and then e takes d5. Yes, if this happens, this has already happened actually. Queen takes b4. Looks like the norm chances will be disappearing.
And the thing is that I'm very impressed. I played him in the Politican Cup last year, and he seemed an incredibly knowledgeable young man. And I believe that once you play through the odd 1,000, Sicilian games, that all these typical sacrifices of knight d5, bishop takes b5, knight takes b5, you see them so often that it's a little bit like pattern recognition. And then here, as soon as he saw this position with the queen on b6, rook on b4 as well with the bishop on e1, then knight d5 will come up as a candidate move. And then when you've got a young player who's already such highly rated as Ariantari of 25-50 at only 15 years of age, once you see knight d5, you can see the following line. It's almost like knight d5 is the hardest move to see. I think that Justin Saka will have to sit here and suffer for a while. Yeah. So I think we can go back to the game of your choice.
We're thinking port number 2, perhaps. Mamedyarov, Sheparinov, which has progressed rather dramatically after knight bt2, where we left the game. Black played b5, trying to hold on to the pawn, which seems logical because, like we talked about, white will have to lose a tempo once he plays the typical a4 in these positions. Maybe not here, but well, he plays it here anyway. So that looks like lost time already. But okay, maybe there's a concrete idea. c6 must be played, as otherwise the pawns will be, well, you can hold on to the pawns. b4 will drop c4, can't play a6 because of the pin, so c6.
It's interesting that he's played a3 and a4.
Yes. Knight e5. Very concrete. Knight d5 would seem to be the logical move, but maybe he doesn't like it after knight c6. I guess we can think about e4 even.
Knight b4, I assume. Oh no, sorry, I can't play knight b4 now. The knight's still on c6, so I cannot play knight b4. I have to move the knight to...
Well, you can.
Okay, but I'm a bit worried about... Oh no, maybe I can, I thought I had a knight takes e7 idea, because the bishop might come into the game.
So yeah, it seems like black didn't
So
like,
what happens if
something here.
What happens if I play knight takes c5 and I take the rook? I'm just curious about that as well. This is the other.
That takes.
Oh, that actually did happen in the game. Sorry.
Ah, yeah. So it didn't go for this, but he must have not liked something. So he played knight takes e5, sacrificing the exchange, but getting some pawns. So it's 7 versus 5. So yeah, should be roughly material equality. Knight e4, forcing black to exchange the queens. Flicking in knight takes f6, and now black must take care of this pawn. So a6, bishop e3, and g5. So again, we see Sheparinov with
this
the
famous
exchange
material
sacrifice,
imbalance,
which he had in the Sicilian game as well against Bromberger.
It's a game which was actually a very good game. He just failed to convert. I must admit, it should be fine. So what happens if I just hit your rook, force you to the e8 square? Like I want to play the typical at the right moment f4 and bishop c6, and it's the very simple direct plan. I'm not being very subtle here, I admit. But you know, if I can hit your rook with my bishops and you can't go anywhere, well, you can go to d8, but I think it's good to force the exchange of rooks here.
So can we play f4 immediately?
Well, I should say it doesn't actually win material if we do knight moves bishop c6, but I believe it's good to trade, although that's a bit painful.
That's an annoying pin.
That's an annoying pin.
Yeah.
But okay, can I move my knight somewhere, perhaps a little bit, knight g6, for example, and then.
But then bishop c6.
Yes, and then bishop rook d8, and then I swap off the rook.
Ah, yeah.
But in general, I don't want to allow this because after rook takes, bishop takes, rook d1, when you've got the exchange up, taking off one pair of rooks usually makes a huge difference.
Okay, but at least the rook is not being trapped in anyway, so.
No, but I believe that Sheparinov should be reasonably happy.
I think black should be reasonably happy here.
We can see that the times, they're quite equal. I think.
I mean, he has his trumps in the queenside pawns and potential pressure on b2 at some point.
No, I think he's just showing off the his analysis that he's had before, something in a similar line in the Catalan, and he's thought, well, my opponent has played a3 and a4, so surely my idea of sacrificing the exchange must be better with an extra move, because to be honest, it looks like a very typical position, but white's played the pawn to a4 in 2 moves.
So, meanwhile, we're getting news from the candidates that Caruana has played Benoni against Aronian.
That's a very provocative.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, to be honest, the Benoni is not the opening with the greatest of reputations in modern chess. And maybe Caruana feels that he has to start trying to win games and put pressure on his opponents earlier on, especially since Sergei Karyakin from Russia has +2 already.
It seems like players are trying to surprise each other. Svidler has been, he played a Slav in one game, I think, against Nakamura, going away from his usual Grunfeld. So trying to, inflict some surprises.
Shall we visit a couple of other games just a little bit lower down? How about board number 6?
Movsesian A Wonder.
Yes, because we have, I think, the 2 ends of the spectrum here, and we might even get them on camera.
Yes,
and we can see just a slight age difference between the 2 players.
A Wonder Liang, only 12 years old.
And Movsesian, I believe, is 37. So he is the rising star of American chess by far, of course, and rated 2400 at 12 years of age is quite an achievement already. Nobody really likes playing someone like this, but let us see how this occurred.
Just a positional English opening, it seems, g6, and Movsesian decides to play e3 here, develop the knight to e2, quite typical for the English in many lines. d6, d3, and quite often the plan for white is to expand on the queen side at some point, play rook b1, b4, but he puts the knight into d5 here immediately. And actually we sort of have a close Sicilian reversed here. So it's like white is playing e4, black is playing c5, and we just have a closed Sicilian. So this is a typical plan, actually, from those openings.
Yes, yes. And it's very interesting that it's probably Mosevsian thinking this is a good choice to play against a young player, not so theoretical, lots of ideas.
f4?
f4 is a little bit unusual, I must admit. You'd bet a little bit of money on rook b1 and b4 and continuing on normally.
Yeah, usually we're not playing this until black has played f5 at some stage. So, but he plays f4 immediately, knight d8. Bishop d2, perhaps getting ready to expand on the queen side, but after this he takes and plays queen b3. So pressure on b7. Note that knight d8 importantly protected the c7 pawn, enabling the queen to leave its defense. So everything defended for black, and I think this should
no,
be,
it's still reasonably
equal.
Yes, yes. No, I mean nothing special has happened. We can see Mosevsian has played the
rook f2.
Rook f2. It's quite unusual in the English or opening to play this sort of idea of f4, and dare I say it, maybe attempting to double on the f file. But rook f2 also just defends lots of squares. To be fair, it's not so aggressive. It's hard to believe that the queen on b3 and the two rooks will somehow manage to attack f7. But you don't know. Mosevsian is a very well-known attacking player. Rook f2, I think, is more just temporizing as well. You just want to protect stuff, but it gives you the option of doubling rooks. You can see the very young player looking a little bit puzzled, which I'm very happy for. I don't want things to come too easily to the young. I want them to pay their dues and suffer a little bit, you see.
They must learn the ways of the world the hard way.
And we can see that the one big factor that Mosevsian has at least managed to do is cause the young player to think for quite a long time. And rook f2 is a bit unusual. Shall we perhaps visit top board one more time, since that's going to decide the
that's more or less
first place?
The tournament.
And we had this very unusual pawn sacrifice, I believe. After a4, we left it after a4, b4.
So in this bishop g5 could be a novelty. Sacrificing this pawn on d4, which is one of the ideas of c6 for black. And he played a4 to break up the pawns, b4, and we had the moves we expected, rook d1.
Very interesting, goes to a7, not to get hit by knight c4.
Yes, not to lose the tempo on knight c4. Knight comes to d5, knight c4, and the knight on d5 indirectly protects c6, so now we can bring this knight out.
We can see here Michael Maron watching quite closely.
Joined by another Michael Doherty from Canada.
Yes.
e4, bishop takes on g5, queen takes d5. And
knight has to find a square.
f6 looks normal, unless there's something wrong with it, which I don't see.
I must admit it looks solid, but I can at least play rook d6 here and try to double on the d file, hit the c6 pawn. Everything is covered for white, as it were. Like, I'm a pawn down, but very typically in the Catalan, the extra pawn is a c pawn, and here it's very securely blockaded. We saw this similar gambit in the Catalan, but in that case the pawn on b4 was holding it. In the game of Mamedara versus Beliavsky, yeah, the pawn on c6 is still held from expanding. Okay, I play rook d6 simply because it's the obvious move for white. I can double on the only open, well, I have two open files, but it's the obvious move. And then if you protect my pawn, I'll double again, and I have, well, no, I probably don't have ideas of e5, because you can play rook d8, but okay, I double, I'm threatening e5.
Can I play queen c5?
No. Could be a good move. I could probably just exchange. I think I have to exchange now. And now, if I take on c6, you're going to take on e4.
Yeah, so maybe e5 is possible here.
And then I might try to snake off with my pawn.
And then I'll try to hurt you here. Okay, then I can. Well, doesn't really threaten anything.
Okay, but it maybe alleviates the pressure. Rook D1.
D1 looks natural.
Hitting the knight on D5 with 2 pieces.
Maybe something more active like Rook
Yes,
C8.
yes. Well, I think, to be honest, Rambaldi is looking for a good way to give back the pawn and achieve equality. We can see that Gupta has now a decent time advantage. And you can, I like the way he plays. He just gives his opponent practical problems. He always has a bit of extra time. He seems rarely ever in like danger of losing. You know, like here you can see that White has a lot of compensation for the pawn, and it's as far as I know, it's a completely new position. The sacrifice of the pawn. But I think Queen G5 is very interesting, stopping Knight E7, and I think actually you can't. I think Knight 5 F6. It will be met by Rook D6 and the obvious doubling of the of this. I'm not sure. Can you play H6 and then Queen C5 after Rook D6? Maybe that's an idea as well. I believe we might.
Yeah, we'll leave this one for now. Rambaldi thinking about his knight retreat, but meanwhile we might have close to a decisive game here.
What happened here? This was the game, of course, where Tari played the very thematic Knight D5 sacrifice.
Knight D5, which actually doesn't only sacrifices one unit of material, but gives tremendous pressure here. Knight B8 is played, at least ready to meet the threat of Knight C6, and also enables Queen B7 to defend the E7 bishop. Rook H3 was, however, played, which...
it's a very unusual looking move.
Yeah.
Oh, but it has, yes, as you've pointed out, Ingvar, a very concrete threat.
Very concrete.
I must admit, it's a very easy move to miss when you're black.
Because all the action is somehow on E7.
Yeah, but
in the center you want to play Rook E1.
In your own mind, yes, in your own mind, I've got Rook HE1 already implanted there. And therefore, after Knight B8 to control this C6 square, to feel Rook H3 threatening Rook B3 coming at you. I must admit, the position looks terrible for Justin Saka. I think Rook H3 is a very good move. And as you said, he's not even sacrificed that much to reach this position, and he already has an enormous amount of threats.
So let's say we retreat or something. Just looks like we can play Rook E1, and then we're threatening Rook B3, takes B8. Yes,
and then we still got the same threat as before with Knight C6 and
and also Knight C6 we can.
So no, I mean this position looks terrible.
Yeah, I'm not sure what black can do here. So it looks.
Yes,
looks quite bad for black.
No, because the worst thing is that sometimes when White sacrifices a piece, you sometimes just give the piece back, and you know you can continue to play on. But here, giving up the piece back is just material.
Yeah, no, but he got the rook, so it's just.
No, but I meant if you allow Queen takes C7, if you castle kingside. And you just allow me to take. Then it's not very pretty.
Ugh.
But I got to be honest,
but it might be the no.
I mean
it's just horrible. So
I think we might let Justin Saka sit there for a while and contemplate his last round game.
His last round fate, which doesn't seem to be very nice. So traditionally, we'll take around a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back. So get your coffees, and we'll see you in about 10 minutes.
Chess.com is about playing. At any moment, there are thousands of people from around the world playing on Chess.com. So whether you're a total beginner or a grandmaster, you'll find a game quickly with someone at your level. You can play at any pace, from 1-minute bullet to 5-minute blitz to 60-minute games. Or you can play more relaxed games where you have several days to make your move. There are tournaments starting every few minutes, or you can play against our customizable coaching computer. Chess.com is for learning. Chess isn't just about playing, it's about getting better. Chess.com puts the best training tools at your fingertips. Sharpen your game with over 50,000 tactics puzzles. Improve your strategy with training videos by top grandmasters. Get instant feedback after your games with real-time computer analysis. Regardless of where you're at now, you can take your game to the next level. Chess.com is for sharing. Join the community where you can discuss chess ideas in the forums and follow the latest chess news. Or join a club with friends and play in a league against other clubs. You can find all this in your browser at home and at work, or on the go with your phone or tablet. Signing up is free and easy. So what are you waiting for? Enjoy your game.
Long before man reached the remote island of Iceland, a land of ancient ice caves, sprawling glaciers and pristine water, a massive volcanic eruption occurred, creating the Ulvus Spring, a majestic underground spring deep below the Earth's surface. For 5,000 years, water has filtered slowly through layers of lava rock, creating exceptionally pure and naturally alkaline water with the perfect mineral balance. Clean, crisp, and untouched. Discover Iceland's greatest natural resource. Icelandic Glacier.
Hello, my name is Arnheiður. I live at this farm Bjartearsandur here in Hvalfjörður, and I would like to welcome you to join me and my family here for wild mussel picking by the shore. My name is Ólafur Ragnar Grímsson, and I live here at the presidential residence with my wife, Dorit. And like other Icelanders, we are going to invite you to visit our home. I'd like to invite you to an open band rehearsal. I would like to invite you to take a foot bath with me in a geothermal pool. Come with me for a historical walk around the Herring Museum. I want to invite you for a personal shopping experience. Make some Icelandic monster soup. Come and hunt some goose. I'm going to have a birthday party. Any takers? You're all invited. My name is Jón Gnarr and I'm the mayor of Reykjavik. And I would like to invite you to have some Icelandic sushi with me. Dúfa is our neighbor, and she usually comes when we go pick mussels. And here's one of our neighbors as well, Heiða. Rob Lilly, Australia. Mie Prins fra Danmarku. Malgosa Mil fra Pólandi. Jara Petter fra Israel. I've been 3 times in Iceland now, and I love the country, but I love more the people. When I decided to run for mayor, I invented a political ideology of nonsense, you know, and pure populism, you know. I just, you know, promised whatever people wanted me to promise. Stick around. Hello. Come with me and I will show you how to do it. This old town can turn around. Perfect. It was really nice. We had guests from all over the world. The weather was good. And we had a lot of mussels, and it's delicious food. And I think everybody's happy. At least I am. Stick around and stand your ground. The sheep in Iceland, they have 2 layers of wool. The one that is close to them. The highlight was when she pulled out the book that her family had made for her mom.
And then all the people make, and this is all sweaters that she had made. And she made. When I'm invited into a home abroad, it's like a key to the country and the culture and the people. If you get a glimpse of what's inside, with the homes of the people, I like it.
I'll stay right here for you forever.
And we're back to the Reykjavik Open last round, and yeah, things will be decided naturally in this round. We want to have a look at the game of Gawain Jones again. He's black against Dimitri Andreikin.
And we left it after this very interesting bishop g4 move.
And Andreikin, one of the people on 7 points, hoping that Gupta fails to win on board 1, so that he can catch up. Yeah, we left after this bishop g4 move, when we thought that knight c5 was not that great an option because of e5. But that's indeed what happens.
Here both turned up for suits in the last round, very professional of them. I like the fact that they turned up suited and booted for the last round, looking clean cut, as it were. I must admit, when you said, e5 here, attack the weak d6 pawn, all the usual ideas of weakening the d6 pawn, taking, it seems to be optically a bit better for white, but Gawain had a very concrete reply in mind.
Yeah, f5. Okay, now if white were to take, which I don't think is a good option, I think black is happy. Rook takes f6, he keeps
he keeps his pawn
an extra
structure.
pawn in the center, and should be okay. But Andreikin had different ideas. Bishop back to e2.
Seems like a very logical idea, because you don't want to play bishop f3 for obvious reasons of the capture.
And now knight e6.
Okay, so the main idea here is we have a target on d6 that's always a little bit weak. So I think this is going to be the main attraction of the menu, as it were.
Rook f e1, queen c7.
So now
that's the current position.
Yes, so the queen has moved off the d file, away from the pin. And we have to assume that if it was black's move, he would just simply play d takes e5.
Indeed.
Which would lead me to say that white should probably play e takes d6. The only unusual thing is that Dimitri Andreikin, who in fact has a sizable time advantage over the usually fast moving, has not played it straight away. There you go, with perfect timing. He plays e takes d6 on our screens. Kind of makes me happy because I wasn't sure what other move he had. I guess he might have had knight d5, but e takes d6 is such a obvious move. And then he still has knight d5 next. So I think after e takes d6, this is quite a tough position for Gawain. He has to basically protect these d6 pawn for the rest of the game. White must be a lot better here. I won't play knight d5 straight away because of the pin on the c file. So if knight d5, black could just play. He could take with the rook, but I think that the more obvious move is to just move the queen first to d2, force black to defend on d6, then play knight d5. Must be a very pleasant position for white. But okay, there are many ways to play this for white. The main idea is that we have a very, very concrete weakness on d6. So I do not believe Gawain would be very happy with the position at all. He will have to review one chapter in his book immediately. Well, actually, sorry, he came back from a King's England, so he can avoid this. So I think
I'm wondering about. Okay, I mean, there's a pin here, but we do have an in-between move, so this would be quite a forcing line. But maybe, putting the rook on f6 could be useful here.
Yes, that's true.
And then knight c5, and black seems to keep everything.
No, I mean,
together.
I believe if I'm going to exchange the knight for the bishop, I always like the idea of knight d5, recapture with the piece, of course, because I want the pawn to be the target. So knight d5, bishop takes, rook takes is another very obvious. The big idea is to want my queen at the head, or I want to put my rook. So if you imagine knight d5, bishop takes, rook takes. The white plan here is very simple. I'm going to double on the d file, although I do have a discovered. I've got bishop f3 coming, rook d1. It seems very easy to play for white, I must admit. Queen c3 is also in the air. Oh, the more I look at this, the less I like it for black, actually. I'm not sure if black has a better move than bishop takes d5, because he has to move the queen. So I thought that if I got to play queen c3 check with the knight on d5, it must be very pleasant, to say the least, because the king has no obvious squares, and there's knight f6 in the air. We can see Dimitri Andrikhan there thinking he's got the extra time. He actually is finally working hard, as we see. He hasn't played many Grandmasters this tournament. Had a couple of points, half-point buys to sightsee. But he knows he has to win in the last round. This is the money game, as it were.
Yeah.
I think we'll let Dimitri Andrikhan sit there for a while and ponder and enjoy his position, and we shall move on perhaps to another board. Where would you like to go to?
Sergei Movsesian. He has the black pieces against... No, the white pieces against...
oh, yes, our young lad, as it were. Our young 12-year-old.
F2 move. Earlier in the broadcast, Liang put the queen back to d7, and now
f5.
So it looks like he wanted to use the f-file after all. So he temporarily sacrifices the pawn.
Is it really a sacrifice though, if I just double rooks? It does explain rook f2 though.
Yes.
So I must admit this looks terrible. I can't imagine you take this. Because if you allow rook takes f5 for free, the f7 pawn really is a weakness, and I have basically taken away one of the defenders of my king from g6. So I'm willing to be quite certain that the young man won't play g takes f5, but then I might be wrong, because I believe he actually did take it.
Yeah, this is already the position.
Happened. Yes, it's the actual position.
Rook a to f1.
I don't like this position at all. Was he actually threatening f6?
So f5.
He was threatening f6, I guess.
f6 is becoming an option.
Okay, so I suddenly like this position a lot more for white. I thought that it would just be an exchange on the f-file, but with the knight on d5, f6 then becomes a real problem. Very original play by Movsesian, that normally in the English we play on the queen side and we use our feature-headed bishop.
Black was thinking about attacking on the king side.
We've had so we played g takes f5, rook af1 happened, and I believe he played knight to f6 from our screen. Yes. We can see the young man playing there. And well, we have a lot of choices now. We could capture first on f6 and then play rook takes f5, winning a tempo. Can't hurt.
We could try to
bring the other knight.
Yeah.
I must admit, I like the idea of just winning the tempo, though. I'm a very boring man in my old age. And then we just play rook takes f5. You have to waste another move.
Probably go back.
Yeah, and then I still have knight c3 coming to d5. This looks very pleasant for white, to be honest.
Looks very...
Because the d5 and e4 squares are very attractive for the knight. And it seems almost impossible for black to generate... Well, he can play knight e7 straight away, I guess. But black would like to be able to play f5 if he could, force the rook back and play f5 himself. But this queen on b3 is sort of holding the f7 pawn as well, indirectly. What would you play here for black, Ingvar?
For black, I would look to play knight e7.
Knight e7, try to force the rook back, yeah?
And try to play f5, but again, white would have to calculate. Oh, sorry, black would have to calculate stuff. Like you said, best on c5 if I'm going f5, stuff like that. But maybe this is okay for black.
Yes, yes. I mean,
case of c5, it looks just king h8.
Yes, and there's no obvious
threat.
No obvious win, as it were. Can I try to regain that square? Because you don't have enough on f4. If I play e4, a very concrete, I'm going to take all your light squares away from you. Because I think the exchange, again, favors white if I get control of the f5 square.
Quite like getting out of the way.
Yes.
Maybe bishop g5 even.
Bishop I like bishop g5 very much.
Just trying to play for the light squares. Yeah.
I think this looks pleasant for white, I've got to admit. This is one of these positions where black knows he's done something wrong, and he's not quite sure why.
Yeah.
Which is what the little man is thinking there. He's thinking, I know I'm a little bit worse, but I'm not sure where.
Where or why?
These days, you after the game, you immediately jump on the computer, ask your coach in whatever country he is, and go, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? I must admit, at first impression, this looks a bit pleasant for white. Very original, impressive play by Sergei Movsesian after his drawn game yesterday with Tanya. Okay, very interesting.
Yeah.
Shall we
Speaking
have a
of-
quick look at the last board that we've not seen on the cameras, the game of Swedish Grandmaster Grandilius?
Aha.
Because he, of course, had this his second debacle, if you want to call it, miscalculating the pawn ending, where he did not have to exchange into this pawn ending. And it'd be nice to see him recover. Personally, I'd always like to see a comeback, as it were, in the last round to leave him with a slightly better look. Ooh, a rather unusual position.
Yeah. This was from an English opening somehow. Let's see what the white pieces is. Guðmundur Kjartansson, the 2014 Icelandic champion. D5, and I know. I think knight c2 is the line here, but okay, e3 is quite normal. Preventing e3 by black. Bishop c5, knight c3 with tempo. And that goes to b3. And now d4. Okay, this looks a lot like the c3 Cillian, of course, with colors reversed. But as always with reversed openings, there will be some differences because of the extra move.
Black seems to be very pleasant, I must admit.
Quite solid, yeah.
Always nice to... It's very annoying that you cannot play e4.
Yeah, white has the extra pawn in the center. He would like to advance it, e4 at some point, but...
He has to have bishop d3, would have been very painful, so he had to play rook d1.
So rook d1 first, and now king h1.
Yes,
obviously getting ready to push in the center.
Knight a6 was connecting the rooks, and he can now... He has to take with a knight, and black
And
seems to
c5.
be rather more active. And I'm trying to defend the white position, saying, well, if I can push my central pawns, I can force the black pieces back, but black seems to have very active pieces.
Yeah, and he's always stopping this e4 idea every move. Knight c5 now must react to this trade, queen to c5, and now e4 is met with queen g1 mate, so that explains queen e1.
Okay, but it's not often you see a position like this on move 19 of a game where the only piece you have off the back rank is a bishop on g2, and your kings on h1, and your queens get to go to e1. Okay, let's assume that black plays the obvious move they're thinking, just plays rook d8, shoves the rook on the open file. It still looks awkward to play. I'm not so sure what you play here. If you play e4, I want to do something annoying now. There's a very strange... This is going to sound a little bit ridiculous, Ingvar. Can I play queen b4 here?
You want to be clever.
I think it's the last round. You know, I can sacrifice other people's
And
pieces.
actually,
it's mate, yeah?
It's nice mate because the bishop covers the h3
yes,
square.
the bishop covers the h3 square.
So it's a nice geometry. So that might be...
I should say this is just a cheap trick.
Not bad for an old man.
Oh, not bad for an old man. I'm caffeined up quite early today, and I've decided I could see the back rank because the bishop and knight are there, and I've played rook d8, and I've gone, there's a bishop covering g1, there's a bishop covering h3, so instantly we know that it's an artificial back rank.
Yeah.
And
okay, let's say this, but maybe now...
I know,
just even bishop b6
yes,
is coming to c4, and the queen is rather short on squares. It seems black should be better.
I mean, he has this huge, I mean, it's equal material.
Yeah, but all the pieces on the back
all the
rank
pieces
and rather passive, so it's just huge difference in piece activity. So bishop c4 looks annoying, and if you play b3, then I think just a simple move.
Oh yes.
Queen d4 should be
bishop
sufficient.
d2, yeah.
You must play this, and then...
Oh yes.
Well...
Oh, this is a bit sad.
Yeah. So
okay, knight c3.
So perhaps...
Knight c3, bishop e6, just develop a
go
piece.
back.
which is a bit sad, but at least I'm covering the back rank now, and after bishop c4, I have to play queen e2. Oh no, not queen e2, queen... It's an unpleasant position.
Yeah, it looks very unpleasant for white.
Okay, I can play queen c2 and nothing terrible happens to me. Bishop d3, queen b3, but something's gone wrong. Anyhow,
yeah, black is having all the fun.
Black is having all the fun. We can see here on our screens the former Icelandic champion. He's decided to go get a lot of water.
Yeah.
To try to put some water on the fire that's happening in the position, and almost certainly he's sitting at the cafe now trying to have a bit of extra caffeine. But Niels himself, it's very hard to make a comeback from a, you know when you lose the second last round game of a tournament, and you know that you're playing in the last round for nothing but pride and a couple of rating points.
Yes.
And in this position, okay, Grandulis has played very well, but he's got the suit on for the last round, but he knows that he's not going to hasn't put it, be able to afford a mortgage on a new house, basically. Not in Sweden, anyway. And, okay.
How about looking at our good friend, Tanya?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
She's been having a fantastic tournament. She made a 9-round GM norm already.
And she is actually playing, interestingly enough, the veteran.
Alexander Beliavsky. She has the white pieces. We had a Semislav, but with his trendy G3 option here.
I must admit, it's like everybody's playing like this now. We should say immediately that playing G3 and get at the pawn on C4 happens often, but generally does not happen with the knight on C3, because traditionally we can play knight D2, something like this to pick it up. With a knight on C3 and the fianchetted bishop, because the bishop then is on the G2, the famous H1 A8 diagonal, picking up the C4 pawn is usually not being done by your bishop, it's not being done by your knight. So it is very unusual.
So bishop D2, knight BD7. Let's see if he tries to hold on to the pawn. A5 comes here, no, B5, okay.
We forget that in fact Alexander Beliavsky had a similar game against Shak Mamedarov in this tournament, where he in fact has had this position, not this one, but he actually had a d takes c4 pawn sacrifice. Game. And I thought maybe Tanya was going to repeat the game, but she has not.
So queen takes b6, queen a4. So he decides to more or less give up the pawn, but trying to get something in return in case of queen takes c4, already bishop a6.
Yes, yes.
And black is getting quite active. So she decides to play knight d2, wants to take with a knight instead. Also we open up this attack on the c6 pawn. But black gladly accepts the offer of the d4 pawn.
No, I mean if black can swap off a few pawns in the center, because he knows that the pawns on c6 and c4 are not of the greatest of quality.
Yeah, and they're going to drop off in the next two moves. Queen takes c6, rook was hanging, and now queen takes c4. So the pawns are equal now. The queen drops back, and the white queen drops back.
I believe Tanya's playing in her very solid style that has actually been very successful for her in these tournaments. And many times in her chess career, she has tried to play perhaps more aggressively against the high-rated players, and it has not come off. And then she went through a period of time where she tried to play solidly, but she got grinded down. But in this tournament, she's battened down the hatches, and she's proven a very hard woman to beat, as it were.
And knight c4, bishop came to b7, bishop e3 attacking the queen, now queen a6, which is our current position. Black really shouldn't have any problems here, it seems,
unless I'm losing a pawn on a5. I would probably like to trade on b7 first, because then I don't want my king on g2 for a check somewhere. I don't know why, but maybe queen c6 check might happen one day. So if I just go bishop takes b7 and knight takes a5, they're very concrete, let's just take stuff. Do I get myself into trouble?
Let's say I take... Well, actually, it's nice to have this guy hanging. I might even take it here.
Yes. So yes, maybe bishop takes c3 is not playable. Well, that would be...
I mean, if you have to move the rook here, we just drop back with the knight and...
oh, no, but then I can play rook c7.
Rook c7, maybe.
Maybe now I can... If you drop back with the knight, I win back my pawn, and they go off and have coffee. And Alexander tells stories of when he was just a young man and getting his second GM norm all those years ago. He goes, oh, in the Soviet championships, it was so hard, you know.
Yeah, we can't actually move this knight because e2 would hang. And the problem with, now that the rook has gone from b7, we can think about think about taking on c3 and pinning. But on the other hand, we're not threatening to win this guy yet, so maybe you can actually think about c4 and bishop d2.
What happens if we double on the c3 knight?
Here.
Yeah, well, I've got a rook on f8 doing nothing.
Yeah.
Just keep the pressure on.
Yes.
I want to win back the pawn, and you know, everything gets chopped off on the queen side. Want to take slight advantage of the fact?
Okay, I'll go back here.
You are trying to take your own advantage. That the knight will then be able to take back on a2, I assume, and protect.
Yes, could be able to take with the knight. That's true. Also, I think there should be back rank issues if black takes everything. Although he's defending for now with knight d7, so knight a2 looks like...
Knight a2 looks like the move you want to play, to exchange all the rooks on c1, but what can I do here?
Last point that we attack the bishop on b4, so there's no rook c2.
No, this would be keeping your pawn on b2, as it were.
So I'm sure that Tanya is trying to calculate if she can somehow simply win the pawn on a5 in the current position.
But can you imagine the stories that Blavatsky would be able to tell? You know, saying, look, I won the World Junior Championship in 1973, and I was Soviet champion 4 times, in 74, in 80, in 87, and 1990.
Yeah.
Do you have any other news on our famous veteran?
Yes, his peak rating was over 2,700. Well, I had a question about him in the pub quiz, actually.
Oh, yes, yes.
He was the joint winner of the 2013 European Championship, 8-fold tie. And
all the others.
yes, it was Nepomniachtchi. No, I don't remember. And he's also a first-class composer, actually.
Oh, yes.
Well,
I read that somewhere.
That's what was on Wikipedia, where I got my information for the question.
So he did them all by himself, or
he won 6 first prizes in composition tournament.
That's very interesting. In later life, he decided that to expand and do in different things.
Yeah.
Now, I mean,
yeah, it seems like maybe people get more appreciation for endgame studies and stuff like this, like Timon has been having in recent years. So he had an excellent book on endgame studies.
Okay, so I think we'll leave Tanya here.
Yeah.
I think we're going to visit a grandmaster that in reality has been one of the top seeds, but we have not seen him very often. On board 5, Grandmaster Hrant Melkumian from Armenia has been grinding away at everybody, but he hasn't really been able to push them over the line. No. So we should at least see what he looks like on the camera before we say goodbye to him. There he is on the right-hand side. He has been having he hasn't actually lost many games, he's just not been able to win against the weaker players, and that's cost him really the problem. He's playing the highly rated international master, Di Bardino, is it Brazil?
Yes.
He's over 2,500, always unusual when there's an international master over 2,500.
Yes, Diego Di Bardino.
And we can see that Hrant Melkumian at rated 2,650 has the odd 150 points, just nearly on him, or a little bit less. And it's a very slightly complicated position. Shall we see just a little bit early, just from the opening, because it looked like a King's Indian
looks relatively
normal here.
Normal King's Indian
usually
type of position. So let's see where the action started. Black looks like he should be solid here. Rook e6. White took on c5 and played e5. And here's where the action started.
e5 is again, a bit similar to the Andrican game, weakening the pawn structure. And now the tactics start.
So this looks like an exchange sacrifice, right? Or no, it isn't. I thought black could take on f6, but of course there's knight d5 here, and we can't protect e1 and f6.
So this is the current position with black to move.
Could he have missed something?
It actually looks a little bit horrible for black all of a sudden, now that I actually count the pieces.
Yes. I mean, can't we?
Well, bishop takes f6 allows knight d5. Queen takes f6 allows the rook to be taken on e1. If I play, well, it doesn't matter. I was going to say, if I play queen e5, I can just take on e1 and g7, or queen anywhere. Take on
just take on g7.
No, but I mean,
it seems like this looks like a line actually in the Benoni or King's Indian, the 4-pawn attack, where black gets the rook. Well, white gets the 2 minor pieces, but here it's just much better. It's only a pawn.
Yes.
G7 that's going to drop off, and
no, but we can see
the rook and the minor piece. Now the 2 minor pieces are going to be better here.
We can see the Brazilian player looking a little bit upset. Actually, he does not look like he's a happy man. I've got to be honest. I feel he somehow missed something reasonably obvious, but it's quite forcing. I don't believe a player who's 2500 misses bishop takes f6, knight d5 though. He's played bishop takes f6. And I believe knight d5 will happen because that's the only obvious idea. Melkumi has played it instantly.
Queen e2.
So why can't I take a piece with check, he says. So
that's a natural move. King g7.
Now we have a minor prop. We have to protect everything.
Rook d2.
Oh, rook d2, and then move the knight. And
then what?
Well, then we're very happy. If we're the white guys.
Simply, knight comes back, and white has.
Well, he has a wonderful.
I would say a winning position.
Yeah. Something has gone wrong.
Very simple ideas, which is picking up this pawn, for instance.
Yes. No, this is terrible. I think you can see the Brazilian player on the left of our screens. You can see that he feels he's missed something. Unfortunately, this often happens in the last round of a tournament. You're a bit tired. It's the first round.
Yeah.
No,
nice instincts to check out Melkumi and.
Well, I mean, it's just because we've not seen him for such a long time. The fact that he's been in a relationship with an Australian player for many years now has got nothing to do with it. But no, he's a very nice man. He's very fit. We'll just have a quick look now at Christensen, perhaps?
Yes, he's been having an up and down tournament, for sure. Although he's still on par with his rating. But what's happening? He's playing a German, I believe, IM. Torben Koop. And complicated position at first glance.
You have to go back a couple of moves, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So normal.
Oh, yes, almost.
Bishop b5 Sicilian type of position. White accepts double pawns here. But he does have the bishop here. And now he gets this e6 pawn in.
Yes, always just to shut out the bishop on f8 for a long time.
Black decides to play f5, leaving this pawn here, which could be potentially costly.
Okay, at least we see the idea of f5, but now
typical double attack on d5 and b7.
Black seems to be ditching everything to get out of Dodge City, as it were.
Black ditches it. Knight takes d4. Knight takes d5. Rook b8. And
now he played Queen a7.
After 12 minutes, down to 21 minutes after 17 moves, which is not unusual for him. So we're wondering if he might have something
more concrete, perhaps?
More concrete, like trying to activate the rook.
Oh, that looks a very strong move to get the rook on e1 into the game. So king takes d7, rook takes e1 would be rather severe. He can play king
d6.
King d6.
Natural attacking the knight. I'm wondering if we can...
Can we continue? Can we play spectacularly here with...
I'm wondering simply about this, but... no, we'll be down a piece there actually, so...
Can I try the full Paul Morphy, the full Monty?
The full Monty?
No. I want to play bishop e3. King takes d5. Rook d1. I want the... How do you defend all these little guys? I guess you put a rook on d8.
Yes, maybe I'm holding on somehow, although I'm not entirely calm yet.
You're looking for the... maybe it's true. I can try rook takes g7 and bishop takes d4.
Yes.
Which is the obvious try. I will have to start counting pieces at some stage.
But it looks like a very good try actually, because we're going to win material.
Well, I mean, I'm the exchange down back, but I'm only getting it back, as it were.
And we're trying to take on
yes,
d7.
Yes, no, but I meant if you play...
Yeah, if you play what?
But I must admit, the king on d5, usually in the endgame, you try and... But it's not really an endgame with rook and two bishops. Where do we put the knight?
We're going to get the pawn on a6 as well, so we're going to go here. We're going to win this back. And maybe knight takes, okay. And...
Yes, if you play rook takes b2...
And white should be better, but okay, black's surviving. But yeah, queen d7 definitely looks like an interesting option.
Can I try bishop b8 to try to... Sorry, bishop a7 to take on b8 and not d8, so you don't get knight takes d8. We'll say that slowly now.
Bishop a7. With the idea...
I've heard a Spanish speaker in the background.
No, that's not working. So let's go...
yes,
okay,
yes.
I mean, white should be better anyway.
Yep. We can see here, on board 1, they have drawn. So this makes the Indian Grandmaster the winner.
So he's already the winner.
He's the complete sole winner of the 31st Reykjavik Open. So...
yes. Unfortunately, we have some technical issues that we have to deal with, so we'll have to take a short break.
But we can see here that they've just drawn on board 1.
Yes. But we'll be back as soon as we can.
Chess.com is about playing. At any moment, there are thousands of people from around the world playing on Chess.com. So whether you're a total beginner or a grandmaster, you'll find a game quickly with someone at your level. You can play at any pace, from 1-minute bullet to 5-minute blitz to 60-minute games. Or you can play more relaxed games where you have several days to make your move.